In this video, I'm going to show you how I replaced my ugly, old, half-dead boxwoods with a brand new blueberry patch. If you're not sure where to start when it comes to growing fruit in your own backyard, or if you're concerned that you don't have enough space for some fruit trees, a really simple thing to do is just take a look around your existing landscape. Look for something that's kind of plain or boring or past its prime. In my case, it was this little stand of these 3 boxwoods that I don't know how long they've been here, decades I would imagine. And in the last few years, they'd been put through the ringer with an extreme freeze that just completely decimated them. It was time to get rid of them anyway, so of course, being, all about the fruit grove, I had to find something edible to replace them with. And the perfect choice for a landscape fruit plant is blueberry bushes. They are, of course, delicious, but they're also really ornamental. The leaves change color in the fall and they're nice and bright in the spring. They have a good form that's pretty easy to control, and they basically give you year-round interest, which is exactly what you want in a landscape plant. So keep watching and I'll show you not only how I replaced the old boxwoods with new blueberry bushes, but also how I prepped the site and amended the soil so that the blueberry bushes would thrive and give me a huge harvest for years to come. The first thing to do when you're planting a blueberry patch is, of course, to choose the right blueberry bushes for your growing situation. Now, there are 5 different types of blueberries that you need to be aware of because each one is going to be suited to different climates and growing conditions and space requirements and things like that. So the 3 native types of blueberries are lowbush, rabbit-eye, and northern highbush. And then there are 2 hybrid types. We have southern highbush and halfbush. Pretty much every blueberry variety needs cross-pollination. Even if they're labeled as self-pollinating, you'll see a huge difference in the size, quality, and quantity of blueberries if they have a pollination partner. So one of the considerations, in addition to just overall taste and size and things like that as you're choosing your blueberry bushes, is when do they bloom? And you need to make sure, if you have 2 blueberry bushes of different kinds, that they bloom around the same time so they can cross-pollinate each other. I'm going to give you a really quick breakdown on the different types of blueberries so that you can use that to help you research the right kind for your area. First of all, we have lowbush. Lowbush is native to the northeastern United States and eastern and central Canada. And they are what they sound like. They tend to be lower growing, and the berries themselves are smaller and very sweet. And you'll often see these berries used in cooking, baking pies and jams and things like that. Next, we have rabbit-eye blueberries, and these are native to the southeastern United States, and this is one you'll commonly see grown where I am in Texas. And this is because there's a lower chill requirement in order for these to set fruit. And they're also just a lot more tolerant to high heat and humidity and a lot of disease pressures, which is things we really struggle with in this part of the country. Also, keep in mind that rabbit-eye blueberry bushes tend to grow quite large. There are exceptions to that, but generally they're pretty big. And the good thing is the berries also can grow really big, and they're just really sweet and good for fresh eating and basically anything you want to do. Northern highbush is the other native variety, and these are native to the northeastern United States and Canada. The reason they're called highbush is because they are higher than lowbush, although they do still tend to grow fairly low and stay on the smaller side. They're just a little bigger than the lowbush varieties. They also need a much higher chilling requirement, at least in most cases over about 800 hours of chill time. So now we get to the hybrid varieties of blueberries. First, we have southern highbush, which is a hybrid of the northern highbush and rabbit-eye blueberries. So these are very similar to the northern highbush in that they're a little smaller growing than rabbit-eye, but they're going to need a lower chilling requirement. So this is another one that you commonly find in the southern parts of the country. Southern highbush blueberries are heat tolerant, and they also bloom really early in the spring, which can be a really good thing because it means you can get your crop earlier and extend the blueberry harvesting season if you plant a few different varieties. But that also means they're going to be more prone to damage from late spring frosts, so just keep that in mind. Southern highbush also tends to have a little bit shorter lifespan than certain other varieties. And then finally, we have half bush varieties, which are a hybrid of northern high bush and low bush. So they're smaller, about half the size of northern high bush, but they have some of the berry characteristics of those northern high bush blueberries. And this makes them really great for growing in containers or in really small spaces. For my blueberry patch, I chose all rabbit eye varieties because I know they're going to grow really consistently and thrive in my climate. The three that I chose are Austin, Premier, and Climax. And these three all have slightly different characteristics and berry sizes and harvest times. But I chose them because they are going to overlap in bloom time, which means they can cross-pollinate with each other. So I'm here in front of my future blueberry patch. I've got the boxwoods all out, and the next thing to do is amend the soil and get it all prepped and ready so that I can get my blueberry bushes in the ground. I know this is going to be a great location for my new blueberry patch because of the sunlight. Blueberries, like pretty much every fruit, need a full day of direct sunlight in order to fruit their best. I would aim for a spot in your yard that gets about 8 hours of direct sun. Now, let me just interpret that for people in the South like me. When you live closer to the equator, which Texas is a lot closer than other parts of the country, that sunlight is actually more intense. So you can get away with less direct sun and have the same effect on the plants. This is something that Texas gardeners just know to be true, because if my blueberry bushes got 8 hours or more of direct sunlight in our crazy hot summers, they would probably scorch. So I have mine in a spot where they get about 6 or so hours of direct sun, and they get just a little bit of shelter with some dappled shade in the late afternoon. But that's especially for southern growers that really have that intense heat and that intense sunlight. You have a little wiggle room when it comes to spacing. The plant tag will have a specific recommendation about how wide the plant gets and therefore how far apart they need to be spaced. But you can grow blueberry bushes in a little bit more of a hedge form, and so that's what I'm trying to do, is get it to where the bushes grow somewhat close together but still have enough space to spread. So I have mine placed about 3 or so feet apart. Blueberries are slow growers, so it might take 7, 8 years, maybe even more before they reach their full mature size. But you do want to make sure you keep their full mature size in mind right now as you're planning your new blueberry patch. As far as when to plant blueberries, you have some options. If you're in an area where your fall is really short, you may want to wait until early spring to plant your new blueberry patch. But I would recommend, if you do that, if you plant them in spring, then pull off any blossoms that come, so that way the plant can spend its first growing season really establishing a good root system and getting growing vigorously before it wastes its energy on producing fruit. But if, like me, you have a longer, warmer fall, I mean, here it is November and it's very mild right now, you have some room, and it can be a really good idea to plant in the fall. So that's what I've chosen to do. I've just planted my blueberry patch, and they have a little bit of time before we get the colder temperatures in December and January to get established in my landscape, and I may even be able to get some fruit next spring. We'll see. Okay, so now we can get to the actual planting. The first thing to do is clear away any weeds in the area that you're going to be planting. Now, mine was an already established garden bed because, like I said, I had these boxwood shrubs planted, so luckily I don't really have any weeding to do. But you want to make sure and clear away weeds, because blueberry bushes have really shallow, sort of web-like roots that stay fairly close to the surface, and that means they can compete with weeds and other plants for nutrients and moisture. So keep that in mind, keep the area weed-free. The next thing to think about is drainage. Again, like most fruit plants, blueberries need really, really well-drained soil. They don't like having soggy roots. So double check that your site is really well drained. And I do have another video showing how I do that, just a really simple way to test your soil drainage. If you're not sure, if you're worried that your soil might be a little too slow draining, you can mound up some good planting mix material on top of your existing soil and plant the blueberries a little higher, and that will help with drainage. But if you're really concerned that it's a problem, you may want to consider planting your blueberries in a container, like a big 30-gallon container where you can control the exact soil that they're growing in. The other really key part to preparing to plant blueberries is to check the soil pH. Blueberries are notorious for needing really acidic soil in order to grow and fruit. Most garden soil is somewhere in the sort of 6.5 to 7.2 range, so that's pretty neutral to maybe slightly acidic. A lot of Texas, the vast majority of Texas, tends to be neutral to slightly alkaline. Now, I have to say, I'm really fortunate. Where I live in East Texas, it's called the Piney Woods, which means we are in the middle of these big pine forests. So we're talking centuries of pine bark and pine needles falling into the ground. So we've got pretty acidic soil, which is perfect for blueberries. So we have a little haven of blueberry growing where I live, which is one of the things that made me think of growing them in my own garden. So I don't have too much amending to do, but blueberries grow best in soil from between the range of 3.8 and about 5.5. That's the ideal range for growing blueberries, which is quite acidic. And ideally, you want that about 4.5 to 5. So I have done a soil test in my garden, which is something every gardener should do. You can get a really simple pH test just from the hardware store, and that'll give you a ballpark idea of how acidic your soil is. And I'll link to one of those below so you can find it really easily. But I also recommend that you contact your local extension service, because they usually have a soil testing service that you can mail in a soil sample and they'll mail back an analysis of it. Once you have an idea of what your soil pH is, then you can figure out the best way to amend it for blueberries. The main way I'm going to do that is by adding some acidic organic material, and that specifically is peat moss, which is very acidic, and some pine bark or pine fines, depending on what you can find. And as those break down over time, they're going to acidify the soil and just make it healthier overall, because my soil really needs organic material in it. Another great way to lower the acidity of your soil is to add a sulfur-based product, or like I use this Espoma soil acidifier, which is really easy to find. If you use sulfur in your garden, you're going to want to follow the instructions on the package exactly, because if you over-apply, it can shock the plants. You also want to try to avoid direct root contact with this product before it has a chance to work into the soil. If you use sulfur to lower the pH of your soil, make sure to do it in advance. You want to do it ideally about 6 months in advance, because it's a slower process to change the acidity over time. Now, a product like this is formulated to be safe on already established plants and maybe even on new plants, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So plan in advance. If you know you're going to plant blueberries in the spring, then apply the sulfur to your planting area in the fall. So I've taken the peat moss, and this is really, really important. You want to pre-moisten the peat moss. Peat moss is going to suck the moisture out of your soil if you put it in dry. It kind of acts like a wick, and it's going to actually pull moisture away from the roots, and that's going to be a really bad thing, especially with a brand new planted bush. So I'm going to mix my moistened peat moss with my pine bark in this wheelbarrow. I'm going to apply most of this to the soil and dig it in about 1 foot deep, which is about how deep your blueberry roots are going to grow. And the rest of it I'm going to save and apply as a mulch after I've planted the bushes. After that, all you do is dig a hole about 2 to 3 times the width of your pot that the blueberry bushes have come in, and about the depth of the pot. So this is the other really important thing about planting blueberries. Remember, we talked about those really shallow roots that stay close to the surface? So when you're planting a blueberry bush, do not plant it too deep. That is a surefire way to make the plant struggle and maybe even die, because the roots won't be able to get what they need. They need to stay closer to the surface. So keep the newly planted blueberry bush at about the level of the soil that it was in the pot, or maybe even a little higher. You really do want to plant it a little on the shallow side. So once you've planted your blueberry bushes, it's a good idea to go ahead and mulch, either with more of your peat moss pine bark mixture or some other organic mulch. You want to keep those surface roots from drying out. And that's pretty much it. Water it in really thoroughly and keep them well watered for a while. You want to make sure that they have a chance to adjust to the landscape, to their new planting location. Now, you don't need to fertilize yet. Wait basically a full year before applying any fertilizer. They should have what they need, and you want to let them really start to grow vigorously before you start supplementing with other fertilizer. But when you do fertilize blueberry bushes, it's a good idea to use an acidifying fertilizer to reinforce that more acidic environment you're trying to provide. And I think I'm going to have to do another video on that, so we'll get to that in a future video. So here's my final completed planted blueberry patch, and it's ready to just get established in the landscape and start growing. I know it's going to be a little while before I get a big crop of blueberries, but already I feel like it's such a huge improvement over those ugly, sad-looking boxwoods that I had before. And it's got me a little inspired to keep walking around my garden and look for those holes or those places where I could replace something and sneak in something edible. I mean, why not? It feels like a hack. It feels like a sneaky way to get some more use out of my limited garden space. So I hope this inspires you to do the same in your own garden. Maybe find a place that you can pull out some old shrubs and put in some blueberries. So please leave a comment. Let me know if you've done that, or let me know other ways that you've found to incorporate some edible plants right into your regular landscape. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.